Okay, welcome back to the second part of Chapter 1. We will get more into taxonomy and the classification of organisms in later chapters. Okay, in Eukarya, we have 4 kingdoms. Protista, that's protists, Plantae, plants, Fungi, fungus, and Animalia, animals. Protists are pretty simple unicellular organisms that don't generally form any sort of tissue. They don't have multiple cells working together, different types of cells working together. And when you look at all the different phylum, kingdoms, domains of life, you see very similar structures. All of them use DNA, and you'll see important genetic coding is very highly conserved throughout different species. So if you take the genes to make a human eye and put it in a fly, that fly will have an eye there. It's pretty cool. And why is this? Evolution. As we evolve as species, we get these differentiations, but they all come from the same thing. Example here, the structure of cilia. You've got this like 9x3 structure of these tubules that make the cilia of paramecium, these single-celled organisms, as the cilia in our fallopian tubes. Evolution is biology's unifying theme. Dobzhansky, nothing in biology makes sense except in light of evolution. Okay, so we will talk about evolution a lot in this class. And it's not something that you either believe in or not, it's whether you accept the scientific evidence that points to evolution. And if you are a biologist, you do. Biology is a theory that all the evidence, scientific data researchers have found supports this theory. It all goes towards the acceptance of it. And if we find any evidence that doesn't support it, we need to change our theory. It doesn't say anything about religion. Science is about finding evidence that can either support or not support our theories, and religion isn't like that, so we really can't look at them. We won't discuss religion in this class. It's great. Most people who are Christian accept evolution. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Okay, so how is it the unifying theme? One way that we gather information is fossils. We can see different changes that have occurred through different periods of time. The geologic time period shows us which animals were active in that era and how they changed over time. We'll look at a lot of different parts of evolution and the different support for it. The way that they draw this is they draw what's called a phylogenetic tree. So this is millions of years ago, and these are the species that have diverged. So 30 million years ago, this is an insane amount of time. We can't really comprehend how much time ago this is. There was this ancestral bear, and over time, there was 2 branches. One became the panda, and the other branched off and gave rise to these other species. So then you can see, 10 million years ago, the spectacled bear came off, and then this ancestral species took off and had lots of different bears occurring from that. So they all have the same genetic history, but over time, millions of years, like almost 7 million years since these bears have been interbreeding, you'll see differences in them. They'll have different locations as they branch out. So there could be this regional geographical division between the species where they can't breed anymore. So polar bears, their hair is clear. That helps them in the snow to blend in. It's all about their genetics and different mutations that have occurred and traits that have been selected for. So for some time, scientists had thought that evolution was occurring, but they didn't know how. An answer that was proposed by Charles Darwin was natural selection. So he went on a boat, the HMS Beagle, from 1831 to 36, and he collected specimens of all the places that they stopped, like the Galapagos Islands. And from that data, he published The Origin of Species. The same idea was actually published at the same time by another person, Alfred Russel Wallace, but Darwin gets most of the credit for that. Okay, so big misconceptions. Darwin did not invent or discover the theory of evolution. Many scientists already thought it was happening. He discovered the mechanism. What actually was happening to cause evolution to occur. And there's the picture of Darwin that most people see and know. Okay, what The Origin of Species said was descent with modification and natural selection. So descent with modification. There are changes over generations. So you look a lot like your parents. Your parents look a lot like their parents. You might look a bit like your grandparents. The further away you get, the less you look like them. So over generations, you'll see change occurring. So like there's a couple wolves and the offspring is kind of a mix between the two. And then natural selection, what that means is that some of those changes are going to be more advantageous for the environment than others. So if you have really cold years, animals with thick fur will do better. And is it forward thinking? Can it say like, oh, it's going to be cold for a really long time, so thick fur is better? No. It only looks at what's happening right there, what animals are selected for in that moment. It's never forward thinking. It doesn't say, oh, wouldn't it be great to have this for later? So when Darwin was in the Galapagos, he looked at birds, he looked at turtles, tortoises, and he saw how diverse species there were there. So then he looked at differences between this new species and what could have happened to cause them to become new. So like there's little islands there. Some species can't cross, so you'll have this great geographic barrier. And over time, they become different. So he looked at the Galapagos finches and he looked at their beaks. And their beak shape is based on what they eat. So larger beaks can break big seeds open, whereas the smaller ones, they might only be like insect eaters. So the shape and length of your beak is important for what you can eat. So on years where it was really, really dry and you weren't getting a lot of insects but you still had seeds, those larger beaks would be favored. And then if these species have been like apart from each other for a super long time, you'll see these long-term changes occurring. So, based on the fact that our offspring look different than us, and that some are going to do better than others, he found the idea of natural selection. And that's why populations evolve, why there are different traits in different proportions over time. Okay, so those facts again. There are more offspring born than can survive, and the survival is not random. And then second, there's variation. Individuals differ. It's really important, especially for sexual selection. When we reproduce sexually, we combine the traits of two different parents, and so you'll have lots of variation in their offspring. Some of those will be better suited for their environment than others. Therefore, there will be unequal reproductive success. So if a mom with a really big beak has 12 offspring that's beaks are fairly large, and then another mother bird with a smaller beak has smaller beaked offspring, the mother with the bigger beaks is going to be more successful. That's what we actually mean by survival of the fittest. If you're fit, you've had lots of offspring, you've passed on your genetics multiple times. And what happens? We have adaptation occurring. We'll see these differences in traits. So here's a quick example. First, you've got your population of beetles. There's variation within them. Some are darker colored, some are lighter, some are in the middle. Second, you've got a bird coming in. Those lighter beetles don't blend in as well, so they get taken out of the population. So what happens after those left reproduce? You've had evolution occur. Your traits are different. The population is much more dark on average. Okay, so that was natural selection. We also have artificial selection. So artificial selection is where humans come in and selectively breed to get certain traits. So like all dogs came from 40,000 years ago, the same wolf ancestor. But we picked certain traits and we bred individuals together based on those traits to have different breeds. They're all the same species, they can all interbreed, but we've given them these very characterized traits. They actually did this with foxes too. And so what they did in Russia was they took foxes over 40 years and they bred the most friendly. So by the end of that 40 years, they had these super cute, friendly foxes who had a lot of the same traits and colorations as dogs. They had this piebalding, where you've got white in the middle. You'll see that a lot with domesticated animals, cows, horses, dogs, and they were domestic. We also do that with plants for food. All of this food here, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, they all come from the same plant, but we've bred it for different parts of the plant, different genetics. Okay, observing natural selection. If you've ever gotten antibiotics from the doctor, they tell you have to take your whole treatment. The reason is because if you don't, you can lean towards antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So if you start taking an antibiotic and you start to feel better, some people will stop taking it. But you've only killed the bacteria that was the easiest to kill. So then you stop taking your antibiotics, those less easy to kill bacteria keep growing. And then they're more resistant as a population than before. And if this happens enough, they can become antibiotic resistance where none of that bacteria is going to be killed by that antibiotic. So that's why we have different strains of bacteria that are completely antibiotic resistant to almost all the antibiotics we have. So make sure you take all your antibiotics. So after The Origin of Species was published, tons of research went in, and we haven't found anything that disproves evolution. It's a unifying theme. The fact that everything is related and we can look at these relations and learn about ourselves from other animals is a unifying theme of biology. A lot of things we can't study in humans, it's unethical, but we can learn a lot about genetics from flies and mice. You can't really breed siblings of humans together, but you can breed mice together. And we use that to learn about ourselves. This is a funny idea. You can read it, you can pause the video. Okay, now let's talk about the scientific process. You need to understand that so you can evaluate scientific sources. Science means to know. It's a way of knowing. It's a way of finding out knowledge and putting it together. Science can never prove a statement. We can only fail to support it or support it. So with evolution, everything that we found supports it. You know, the cell theory, we say everything's made up of cells, but we cannot physically test every living thing to make sure it's made of cells, right? If we ever found anything that failed to support it, we'd have to change that theory. Yep. Okay, so here's the scientific method. These are the steps. So first, what you want to do is look at your problem, gather research information of what's been found before, and then you form a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess on what you think is going to happen throughout your scientific experiment. So when people say, I have a theory, what they really should say is, I have a hypothesis. I think that when I do X, Y is going to happen. So then you conduct an experiment to test your hypothesis, you analyze the data, see what it tells you, and then you draw conclusions. Those conclusions say either your hypothesis is not supported, you need to make a new one, or your hypothesis is supported and you want to test it a lot more. And if you find a hypothesis that's supported over hundreds of thousands of tests, then it could become a theory.